Hey, puss. I'm still stuck where the train left me. Hey y'all, it's me, Bust Down Tatiana, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll be chronicling the oh-so-messy Acid Betty and Daya Betty versus Alaska and Willam paper dress drama, which has been slowly unfolding over the past month, but is finally over. And in this drama, we saw two very different sides of the same story get told on two different podcasts, and a public apology campaign led by the Bettys, which ultimately now has resulted in a public apology issued by Alaska and Willam on the Race Chaser podcast. And let me just say, after spending the better part of 10 hours researching and writing for this video, I am exhausted. But also, I can excitedly say this is one of the most juiciest nothing burgers of a drama I've ever had the pleasure of covering on my channel. Let's get into it. So the insanity began on June 27, 2025, when episode 9 of All Stars 10, The Tournament of All Stars, aired. And we're in that episode, we saw the girls walk the paper doll runway. And on that runway, we of course have Exhibit A, Acid Betty, in her paper doll Marie Antoinette dress, which yes, also sparked its own controversy on the show, with Michelle doing a PSA to all of the queens to never wear Marie Antoinette looks on the runway ever again. But that's beside the point. The next day, Shokra, the designer of said paper dress, posted images of Acid Betty wearing this dress on the runway, writing, "So excited to finally share this outfit that I made for my friend Acid Betty. Very happy to see the praise from the judges." And then 2 days later, Acid Betty posts a video of herself burning said paper dress. I suppose in a commentary possibly on eating, or in this case, burning the rich. And notably, Acid Betty did not tag or mention Shokra in this post. But as a little treat for those who were paying attention at the time, we did see Willam in the comment section of this post writing, "Love this at Shokra Law look," the said designer of the dress. Which, looking back at this comment, was very obviously Willam stoking the flames of what would engulf these queens in drama for the next month. And several days later, on July 2nd, in the Race Chaser podcast episode AS10E9, The Golden Bachelor, we hear Alaska and Willam breaking down the paper doll runway looks for the week, and Willam makes the first allegation of Acid Betty's non-payment for this dress here.
You know what? Acid Betty also made that video setting the look on fire, the one that she still hasn't paid for fully.
And later in the same episode, Alaska asks Willam who her biggest dispute of the week is, where Willam makes another allegation of Acid Betty's non-payment for the garment here.
My biggest dispute of the week is Acid Betty, because I hate girls that wear shit and don't pay for it. It's tacky. And I don't mean tacky like the back of a Post-it where it barely sticks. I mean tacky as in bad sister etiquette.
Then on July 4th, Hot Goss 301 is published to the Race Chaser podcast feed, including an interview with Shokra, the designer of the paper dress. Where in this episode, Alaska and Willam do notably preface the interview with Shokra with a disclaimer.
"We just want to let everyone know that we reached out to Acid Betty as well.
48 hours ago, a professional
we
time period.
We haven't heard from her yet, but Acid, you have an open invitation to come on the pod."
But jumping into the interview, we first hear Shokra explaining she was contacted by Acid to create a look for the paper doll runway.
They reached out to me last year to do a look for All Stars. She had asked me to do the paper doll dress.
And Shokra even says that because she's got such a long-running relationship with Acid Betty, she's going to be giving her some sort of friends discount, although only ever admits to coming to a verbal agreement on the final price, but does allegedly say there are text message receipts of said price out there in the ether, none of which, to my knowledge, have materialized online.
I would normally charge this for like a celebrity or a bigger client, but I'm going to charge quite a bit less because I support you. I want to help you. I would just like to say to anybody out there listening, if you're going to make anything for a client, drag queen or otherwise, get it in writing, get a contract, get a signature. I made the mistake, and I will fully admit this. Didn't get it in writing. This was all verbal. I do have texts and correspondence that way.
But in this interview, Shokra goes on to explain that just 3 days before the dress needed to be finished, Acid Betty had changes to the back of the dress she wanted Shokra to make in order to fit the runway theme better. However, Shokra didn't think that would be possible to do without getting more materials at extra cost.
Ultimately, I had to go and buy backdrop rolls of paper. I was avoiding buying those because, she wanted like all the different colors of the flame, and they're like almost $100 a roll. I was trying to get away with just getting like paper from Michael's, and she's like, "No, I want the drama." And I'm like, "Well, then it's going to be more money than I initially quoted you, because that's money out of my pocket."
She also claims to have gone through additional expense to pack and hand this dress off to Acid Betty.
I bought one of those giant bins ends. I paid for it. I packed it up and I handed it off to her at LAX, very like on the DL.
Shokra then claims Acid Betty told her verbally that she would handle payment after taping finished in July 2024.
She was like, I'll give you a call after we're done taping to settle up the payment. And that was July 16th, 2024. I have not heard from her since.
And where then Shokra then talks about giving Acid some additional merch and accessories for Acid to wear on the show during her confessionals.
She had suggested, maybe send me some of your merch. I can tag you and I can help promote you. I added some extra pieces. If you didn't end up wearing the crown or the cuffs, I'll add those to the invoice. Or if not, just please send them back.
And finally, we get into some facts and figures when Shokra says she finally receives a payment she claims to be only 2/3 of the total owed amount.
In January of this year, I sent a very personal email and was like, look, I need to be paid for this. Sent an invoice and I said, if you don't respond immediately, I'm going to have to resort to legal action. Less than 2 weeks later, I get a payment, but it wasn't the full amount. It was like 2/3 of the amount. I'm like, well, you used to owe me over $1,000.
A year later?
And next, Shokra talks about feeling offended that Acid did indeed wear some of the accessories that she packed into the box with the dress, but Acid hadn't gone out of her way to tag her or credit her for wearing these in her confessionals.
And again, I don't have it in writing, and I took it upon myself to send you some merchandise in the hopes and just the understanding that you were going to help promote me.
Naturally, this interview riled some fans of the pod up, and they begin going into Acid Betty's socials to comment that she needed to pay the designer of the dress. So much so that Acid actually had to limit comments on some of her posts, like the burning dress one. And in one example, we see someone responding to a post Acid made on Threads featuring the paper dress wig. Pay the designer of that paper dress. Do the right thing. Clap, clap, clap. And where on July 13th, Acid responded to this person saying, I love trolls who know nothing about anything. Tune into this week's podcast for receipts, text messages, emails, and timelines. Oh my. And before we go any further, I want to remind you that you can help support the channel by clicking my link below to join my Patreon to get access to exclusive content like my reaction videos to every episode of Drag Race that I review. And or, listen up, if you DM me on Instagram, I'll send you my spicy link where I post exclusive spicy content. And I'm not kidding. See you there. Then on July 16th, Acid and Daya Betty do their big one. We get an official response from Acid with receipts in response to Shokra's allegations in the Petty Betty's podcast, episode 103, Paper Scandal, where they also have in Spanish, Escándalo de Papel. And in their podcast, Acid starts off addressing the dress situation, saying she felt insecure about her dress because it ultimately wasn't a final product that she was happy with.
I got a dress last minute that I had to finish in the hotel while I was sequestered. And I even have like what he gave me and what you saw on TV. So you can visually compare what I actually had to do in the hotel.
And prefaces her side of the story saying Shokra simply should have sued Acid Betty for the money if she thought she was rightfully owed.
He should have taken us to court, but he didn't because he know he's 100% wrong. And he basically lied. He gave me one price. I promised to pay him. And then the price started increasing months after it was done. And then the story got around that I didn't pay him at all.
The next thing Acid starts talking about is how the original price quote for this dress was $5,000.
When he said $5,000, I was like, oh God, I don't know if I could pay $5,000 for a paper dress. So he's agreed $2,500. This is the email where he's acknowledging that I paid him $2,500.
Where again, Acid is not able to actually show any sort of evidence in writing that the $2,500 number was ever a real number that the two agreed upon. But again, Shokra was also not able to provide any physical proof of an agreed upon number either. Next though, Acid shares on screen of the podcast some text message threads with Shokra dating from early and mid-June up until several days before Acid Betty's flight to LA to film for All Stars. And there's a lot of these two going back and forth in these threads about what Acid wants versus what Shokra is able or not able to deliver on. In the one portion of this video, Acid actually plays a clip where she's giving a tutorial on how to manipulate paper in such a way that it looks like flames.
I'm now going to glue it along here. See? I took this, I'm curling it up. Okay, that's the white. Now I have red. I'm going to do it again with the red.
The way that you're describing all of this, a kindergartner could figure it out.
Finally though, Acid gets back to the discussion of the price of this gown, where Acid says in September of 2024, she received an email from Shokra with the updated invoice showing the final revised price of the gown to be $3,000 because of the need to purchase additional materials. However, no actual invoice is shown here, and it is just a $3,000 figure in writing in an email. Next, we see the first and only invoice that we've seen across any of the shreds of evidence given to us across these two podcasts. And in this invoice, we see a date of January 14th, 2025, and a grand total cost for this dress of $3,665. And look, regardless of what this invoice says or what the price was that these two agreed upon verbally, I've got to point out, I think it's highly unprofessional for someone to send a figure of, let's say, $3,000 like Shokra did to Acid Betty, and then to later come back with an actual invoice at $3,665, 5 months later. Anyways, in this invoice, we can see a line item for the actual dress construction costing $2,500. And notably, this line item includes source materials to pattern and create a Victorian-style dress made entirely out of paper, which I read in totality to point out that the next line was a little strange to me because it's for an additional $500 and says materials cost, paper, lining, foam, lantern, large plastic bin. Oh my. Which I'm assuming there is a plastic bin Shokra mentioned putting the dress into for delivery at the LA airport, and I can only assume that Shokra intended that second line to be the last minute revisions 3 days before the dress was due that she talked about on the Race Chaser podcast. Next, we see another line item on this invoice for $500 for additional labor, which, as Acid Betty calls out in this video, is pretty crazy to invoice a client for, considering it wasn't Acid's fault that this person decided to start working on this dress at the last minute.
Acknowledging that I paid $2,500 and that now the cost is $3,600 because he started including more materials and labor of a person that I did not ask to be hired.
And finally on this invoice, we've got two more line items totaling $165 for the crown and cuff accessories Shokra talked about in the Race Chaser podcast. But what's crazy to me about this whole accessories thing is the idea that you're just gonna throw some stuff in a box with a dress that you're delivering to a client and then expect them to pay you for it.
I don't have it in writing, and I took it upon myself to send you some merchandise in the hopes and just the understanding that you were going to help promote me.
Like, there's just no evidence on either side that Acid Betty wanted these accessories or ever even intended to use them. But anyways, at the bottom of the invoice, we can see Acid Betty's payment of $2,500 shown with a remaining balance of $1,165. And again, neither Shokra nor Acid have put the date of said payment anywhere online for whatever reason, but we can glean that it happened at least sometime before January 14th. But look, y'all, this drama is crazy because after listening to both sides, it's clear neither of them have any evidence of an original agreed upon cost for this dress. These two apparently came to some verbal agreement and never wrote a figure down or created a statement of work. And Shokra never told Acid what the final cost would be in writing until Acid already had the dress in hand, which is an issue on both sides of this drama. And also, I think it's pretty shady from a business owner's perspective to be invoicing clients for things like extra materials and shipping containers and accessories and assistant labor without explicit agreement to do such things in writing. And so I understand why Acid doesn't want to and hasn't paid for those things on the invoice because she never agreed to pay for them. But again, Acid arguably never should have taken delivery of something that she wasn't happy with in the first place, which I know is very easy for me to say as a bystander because from Acid's perspective, she had two options, right? She could accept a mystery garment and pay a mystery price and walk the runway in something, or she could decline it and show up without a dress, which arguably was a worse option in this case. In this podcast, the Bettys also advertise a link to the uncut version of the episode that you can access by visiting thebadbetties.com/superpetty, where on that site, they show the Zelle payment of $2,500 sent to Shokra LA LLC, as previously discussed, and where they say if you donate 1 penny to Shokra's Venmo account and send proof of that to the Bettys podcast email, you'll get a password to watch the uncut version. And this is certainly all very, very petty. Because we even see the pre-filled Venmo donation link says, petty donation, I don't care what they say. You slayed that clown dress in less than 3 days. And so yes, being the investigative journalist that I am, I did send the penny and sent the proof to the Bettys and got the password to watch the video. But I hate to disappoint you because girl, that was a big nothing burger and waste of a good penny. The uncut version of the video has, I don't know, maybe like a few more minutes of extra information in it, and it is mostly just information concerning Acid Betty's communication with Shokra concerning the design concepts and techniques for working with paper. But after both sides of the story got out into the ether, we began to see a public campaign across social media platforms from the Bettys to get a formal public apology from Alaska and Willam for only telling one side of the story and making claims that Acid hadn't paid for the paper gown dress. In a post made on July 18th across the Bettys' Instagram, we see a clip from that podcast episode we just looked at where Acid says, "Wake it up and tags Willam and Alaska. Then on July 24th, we see Acid Betty repost an Instagram story originally posted by Daya Betty reading, "Is there a reason Willam and Alaska haven't reached out to Acid Betty yet? Where is the apology, let alone a simple conversation in general?" They were so quick to have Shokra on their podcast to discuss his side of the paper dress, in which he made and didn't get paid for, which was manufactured to make him look like a victim, which in return caused my sister to get tons of unnecessary hate and trolling comments. Now that Acid Betty has shared her side of the story on the Petty Betty's podcast, it's been silence from them. Seems like they're just feeding into the drama at others' expense. Do better, practice what you preach. And we're also on July 24th, we see Acid Betty share to her Instagram story a very blurry photo of Willam from I don't know when, where she's written, "Mistress Isabel Brooks told the tea on Willam. Everything she said about that clout chaser was so true, so good. And Alaska staying silent is liberal gold." Then finally, on July 25th, we get an acknowledgement of the situation from Alaska and Willam in the YouTube video titled, "Goss so good, we had to make a video." Once they get to the point, Willam first starts by recapping some of this drama, mentioning the Petty Betty's podcast episode, and discusses that Acid says she wasn't reached out to.
Acid Betty also claims she wasn't reached out to. She was looking for a DM directly from Alaska or Willam, not an email from a producer. We did reach out just because she didn't see it. She didn't know what to look for, or she doesn't check her email enough.
Blocked on all platforms.
And says this regarding the invoice.
I don't think that she's going to pay the remaining balance.
I don't know what we did wrong other than say she didn't pay her bill that she told the other girl she was going to pay. She did pay some of the money.
In the comments of this same video, we see Willam make a comment to another user where she says, "Hi, I did DM Acid, but it was the week before to praise her about something. I was wrong about emailing her. I never did that. That was misspeaking. Dipper did though." I see more sides to this story than I can say without a reasonable doubt, because it's he said, she said, that I should have never chose to report on this. I'm apologizing to the other Betty soon. I spoke to Daya yesterday and apologized for making her get in the muck on this. Next, on this same day, July 25th, we see Acid Betty share a photo to her Instagram story from a season 5, I think, mini challenge where Alaska was trying to look like Fifi, that has the caption written, "What I imagine Alaska looks like while reading my messages, ignoring them, and then going on her podcast saying she reached out to me." Acid Betty then asks for an apology on her Instagram story, saying, "I know it's hard to imagine, but Mistress is 100 emoji about our community leech, Willam. I'm still waiting for that public apology I asked for at Willam." On July 27th, Acid then takes to her Instagram stories again, saying, "Do you think Willam and Alaska will give me the public apology I asked for?" with a poll that says, "Am I getting a public apology?" where most people have voted no, or leeches don't apologize. Then on July 28th, Acid Betty posts a show poster that Alaska has advertised for market days, writing, "Hope Alaska apologizes to me during her show, super exciting." And we're on that same day, Willam had posted a photo of herself. Acid Betty has written in the comments, "Still waiting for that public apology." And we're also in the comments of this post, we see someone write to Willam, "Apologize to Acid Betty since you like to present yourself as so self-righteous on other people's behalf." Where Willam says, "The person I owe an apology to was told days ago it will be out on the next Race Chaser. I don't remember you being my new judge, jury, and timeline creator, but get it all out." And on July 29th, Deja Sky posts a photo of a beat that she did on Willam's face in her signature mug, where we see Acid Betty in these comments writing, "What was your advice on her publicly apologizing to me? I have to know." Where Deja says, "I truly like to stay out of everything and be neutral. That's my stance since I adore you both." And finally, on July 30th, Acid Betty gets the moment that she's been gooning for all month. At 10:09 a.m. Eastern, Willam and Alaska issue a public apology to Acid Betty in their Race Chaser podcast episode titled, "Was She Trying to Look Bulky? Season Episode 1 Runway Rundown," at around the 41-minute mark.
I want to officially take a moment to apologize to Acid Betty. Things have gotten out of hand. Untruths were told. We never should have had one person's side of the story on without having the other person's story. I apologize. I really hope that we can move on from this.
And Willam even says that she never should have gotten in the middle of such a situation, saying this.
It wasn't like I was relishing the chance to take somebody down, but I was trying to bring clarity to a situation which was none of my business. Two people had a dispute. One of them wanted me to get in the middle of it. I got in the middle of it, and it didn't make anybody look good in the end.
And that's the tea. But as for my final thoughts on this drama, it was such an eye roll for me to go through this once I realized that neither side had any evidence of the original agreed upon cost of the dress. But at the same time, I can very much be on Acid's side and say, yeah, I wouldn't be paying $3,600 for additional labor, revisions, and plastic bins that I never agreed to pay for. Because that's crazy for Shokra to invoice for. While yes, two things can be true, and I can also understand why Shokra is saying her invoice is unpaid, although I don't think there's any validity to some of those extra charges. Especially considering the fact that the price kept changing. You can't send someone an invoice for $3,000 and then 5 months later update it to $3,600 because you felt like it. And the gag of the season, 3 things can also be true at the same time. Both Acid and Shokra are in the wrong for not coming up with a contract and agreed upon statement of work with a cost estimate and signatures on the dotted line. Hello? And that's the tea. So I hope y'all enjoyed this insane deep dive into a drama that doesn't matter, but good God, it went on for a month and I had to cover it now that we had a bookends to it. So here we go. Thanks for watching today's video and I'll see y'all in the next one. I also want to give an extra special shout out to Ashton, Cayenne, Felicia, JBR, Laura, Matthew Burns, and Will and Tanner, who are all supporting me at my Bussy Week collected here at patreon.com. See y'all later. Love ya. Bye.